Ugh. I was always a dog person anyways. Yes, I'm recording this in pajamas. I'm not getting properly dressed to shoot this thing. I don't even know why I'm talking about this thing. I don't know why I watched this thing. Cats! And I am legitimately not sober right now. Because that was the plan all along. I capped off my work week by getting through Amazon Prime, renting Cats with my partner Liz, and we roped in a whole bunch of our burlesque friends, and we all watched Cats. This is either going to be an uncut mess or it's going to have about 5,000 edits because I'm not editing this drunk. I'm going to edit it sober. But, yeah. Now, there's going to be, if you're looking for a full dissection, there's going to be no proper, I'm not formulating, I don't have a plan. I don't have a point. But then again, neither did this movie. Hey, we're off to a good start. So, a little bit of background. Cats is not a show that I've ever seen on Broadway, and it's not a show I've ever wanted to see. What little I could find out about it, and I've seen a lot of shows on Broadway. I've seen a ton, actually. I've seen Chicago, I've seen Les Mis, I've seen Rent, I have seen Beauty and the Beast, I've seen Avenue Q, I've seen Wicked, I've seen The Lion King, and then I've seen stuff when I was in London, God, over a decade ago, like 15 years ago, crap. Anyways, I saw things like Blood Brothers and Equus. I've seen a lot of really good professional theater and a lot of different varieties. I've seen drama, I've seen musical, I've seen big spectacle, I've seen small intimate. I never had the desire to see Cats, ever, at any point. Because I didn't get it, and I knew I didn't get it. I could tell. Just looking at the images, hearing the songs, I'm like, I don't get this. That's not to say that the stage version of Cats is bad. There has to be something to it. It ran for freaking ever. But so far as I can understand, having talked to some people who actually like the stage version, what works about it are things that don't translate as well to film. Either film is not built to do it as well as theater is, or they just don't translate at all. So like Cats the musical has no fourth wall. The cats are constantly addressing the audience directly, which doesn't really work in film. Film is, you can break the fourth wall, but the assumption is that there's always one there. In theater, you can establish early on, nope, no fourth wall, and just go. You can do that. That doesn't really work in film. There's a lot of actually very direct audience interactions. Obviously, you can't do that in film. It's a heavy dance number, which I'm not saying you can't have dance numbers in film, but it's not the same because with all the cuts and everything, you can tell that they were able to stitch together multiple takes. It's not the same as watching the human body go through these moves and this choreography for an extended period without cuts. It's not the same. Dance does not translate as well into film, and it doesn't play as well as it does live action. And plus, the whole show really has no plot. It's a review-style show where just cats sing about themselves or about another cat. There isn't really a plot to be said, and movies without plots, that doesn't really work. Again, because the suspension of disbelief is already much higher, I'm swaying a lot. Inherently with theater, you can get away with breaking a few more rules because you're already asking more of your audience. So the very idea of making a film version of Cats was a bad idea to begin with because what makes it work, at least so far as I understand it, is all stuff that either doesn't translate or does not work as effectively in film. And then what you're left with is a meandering, nonsensical, plotless story in film. And that's basically what the movie is, but yet it's somehow worse than that because they try to give it a plot, but not like enough that they bother to restructure the thing. They just try and force a plot in there, very crowbarred in. Like one of the people who was in the group chat that we had going on was a fan of the stage show. So she was always quick to point out, no, that's not from the show. They added that. They changed this. But honestly, what makes this thing the strangest freaking thing that I have seen in a while is not, it has nothing to do with adaptation choices. Although, even if this thing had been executed at a much better level than what it is, it still would have been a bad movie because they were staying true to something that was built for a medium that is totally different. It was just, yeah. So, I don't think this movie was ever going to be good, but the way that it's done with this freaky Uncanny Valley fur, sometimes the face doesn't totally line up with the head, or sometimes the head looks like it's a little too small, and the scale is inconsistent from scene to scene, and these bizarre transitions, and it's just, why? Why did anyone think this was a good idea? Why would you do the cats like that? Like, just basic things. Just decide if your cats walk on 2 legs or 4. Don't keep going back and forth, especially when you are dealing with human beings that you are leaving with human being proportions. And when they get down on all 4s, it's really weird and awkward. And you can tell the actors don't really know what to do with it. So it's already awkward watching some stand and some crawl, but then having to see some of them transition from one to the other. That's always a friggin' visual train wreck. Even aside from the effects, because the effects in many cases look flat out unfinished. And there's no official word on this, because the people who worked on it won't talk, because talking crap about a production is a good way to ensure that you don't work again on future ones. So nobody's really talking, but the word on the rumor mill, that it has no official backing behind it, but makes a heck of a lot of sense, is that Universal basically stopped spending money on the special effects once the reaction to the trailer came in, and it was nothing but mockery. And I don't mean like they weren't willing to pay for any more effects work, but they pulled money from this thing, is the word, and that means that there are literally effects that are not finished. They needed it another polish, and the cats are probably the best, but like all the things that aren't the cats are like really freaky. Like they've got mice with children's faces, and it is one of the freakiest freaking things I've ever seen, aside from the fact that that concept in and of itself is horrifying. It looks terrible. And like, again, part of this is execution, and part of this is what were you thinking? Why does Rebel Wilson unzip her skin and like have an outfit on underneath that? Twice! She does it twice! And McCavity, oh god, okay. So McCavity, that's Idris Elba's character. I can remember his name because... oh my god. So, the way they dealt with the fact that they had a whole bunch of very high-profile stars who weren't going to stick around for the entire shoot of this thing. So again, backing up, the way the stage play works. Like, I've seen dissections of this thing before I actually watched it. So I thought I knew what I was getting into. I didn't. You can't be prepared for this. But like, so I know enough about the stage play. So in the stage version, basically nearly the entire cast is on the stage for almost the entire show. Who's front and center and getting the focus on them shifts, but they're all there for the whole time. There was no way that they were going to get that in this case, even though they've got a whole chorus of cats, because they got a whole bunch of top-line celebrities. They got Idris Elba, Rebel Wilson, Judi Dench, James Corden, Taylor Swift, Jennifer Hudson, all these people who were not going to stick around for the entire length of the shoot. So all the cats that those characters played get removed from the proceedings, which doesn't happen on the show. And the way they do that is to have McCavity, who isn't really a villain, at least I don't think, but they've tried to make him into like a proper villain in their attempt to have a plot. It's not supposed to have one anyways. He's vanishing them and like trapping them on a boat in the Thames. And the reason I can remember, I just remember why I started this tangent. The reason I can remember McCavity's name is because when he vanishes Ian McKellen, he goes, McCavity! I'm going to start just doing that. Like just when I leave the room. McCavity! What? Oh, since I mentioned Ian McKellen, he's one of the few who comes off fairly decently in this. Partly because, like, the effect looks much better on him. I don't know if it's just his face lent itself to it a bit more. Maybe, honestly, maybe it's the wrinkles and the age. Because, honestly, it's the youngest actors with the fewest lines on their faces who look the most uncanny. So maybe that's part of it. But he looked pretty good. He performed his bit well. Jennifer Hudson's the other one who's too good for this. Idris Elba, I'm not going to say he elevated what he was given, but I do think he might have been the only one who knew what kind of movie he was in, because everyone else is taking this deathly seriously to the point that I'm just like, dude, it's Cats. Lighten up. I'm going to blame the director on that. Tom, that's your fault. But yeah, McCavity, the color they decided to make his fur is basically the same color that Idris Elba is. And they don't break it up like with stripes or spots or anything. So most of the movie, he's got a hat and a coat. That's fine. But then when he shows up for his big number, and then from then on, he just looks naked. Like way more than anyone else in the movie. He looks naked. And it's really just, and like, a lot of these cats are really horny. The way they act. They're all like, It's very like, what? Ha! Ugh! And like some of them, like they'll do these leg bends or these back arches, and I'm like, stop! It's one of those kids. Look, I'm not trying to judge anybody, but I know this is theoretically supposed to be a family show. I know it is on Broadway, and theoretically this was supposed to be too. And I'm not turned on by that, but I know there are people who are. And I feel like you're playing into that in a way that makes me uncomfortable. No judgment on whatever you like, but don't claim this is a family movie and have horny, writhing cat people things that don't even look like cats. They look like werecats. They look like human. I'm stealing this observation from somebody else in the chat. So, Kitten, if you see this, credit to you for that. But they look like humans who are 5/6 of the way through a werecat transformation. Like it hasn't worked its way up to the face yet and they just froze. That's what they look like. I'm not necessarily going to recommend this experience to anybody. I'm kind of glad I did it as a communal experience. Because pain shared is pain halved. Or decimated. I don't know how many of us were on the call. But if you're going to watch this, watch it. Watch it with a buddy. Do the buddy system so that you know you're safe. Because what were they thinking? What were they thinking? What were they thinking? I'm not saying that 3 times Because, like, that's how big the question is. I mean, what were they thinking adapting this in the first place? What were they thinking hiring a director whose vision was to try and make this weird, semi-realistic, gritty thing out of something that has no business being shot and portrayed and lit and done that way? And just the fur. What were they thinking? What were they thinking? What were they thinking? I don't know, but that's Cats. I'm going to go collapse and stuff, things like, subscribe. It's on that side, I think. Bell, Patreon, stuff. You don't have to do it, though. Because end of the day, you're the council. I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council needs to sober up. And stop saying the word jellicle! My God, they say it like 50 times. McCavity!